We begin the funeral service of the late Dr. David Jankelowitz with Mechila, for asking for forgiveness. Harei ani mevakesh mechila mimcha be'ad mishpachtecha u'b'ad ha'chevra kadisha. Dr. David, I hereby ask you for forgiveness on behalf of your family and the Chevra Kadisha. If in any way any disrespect was shown to you after your passing by your family or the Chevra Kadisha in preparing you for your final journey, I ask you for forgiveness on their behalf. Tehei nafshecha tzura tzura chayim, may your soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Ein lecha od chelek im ha'chaim. Thank you.
The following gentlemen, please come forward to fulfill the mitzvah of pallbearer. Rabbi Jankelowitz, Craig Harris, Sloan Durbach, John T. Gluckman, Michael Fittinghoff, Mark Copeland, Brian Jankelowitz, Stuart Brown,
Okay, thank you. You can start going out. Will people please follow behind the coffin, not in front? Follow the family, please. Sorry. Ata gibor le'olam Adonai mechayei meitim ata rav le'oshia mechalkel chayim bechesed mechayei meitim berachamim rabim somech noflim verofeh cholim umatir asurim umekayem emunato lishnei afar michamocha ba'al gvorot u'mido melech meimit umechayem atzmiach Yeshua v'ne'emanata la'chayot meitim.
Charles Jankelowitz, Mr. Willie Furry,
Check.
will 6 other gentlemen come forward to join us, please?
Come, sir. All right. Thank you. יושב בסתר היום אצל שרה יתלונן, ומעל אדוני מחסי ומצודת אל אבטח בו כי הוא יצילך מפח יכוש מדבר. אבות ועברתו יצר לך ותחת כנפיו תכסה צינה וזוכר עמיתו. לא תירא מפחד לילה מחץ יוף יומם מדבר, באופי אלוקות יהלוך מכתב ישות צהריים. ייפול מצדך אלף ורבבה מעיניך, אליך לא ייגש, רק בעיניך תביט ושמות רשעים תראה. כי אתה אדוני מחסי עליון שמת מעוניך, לא תעונה אליך רע ונגע לא יקרא בעליך. כי מלאכיו יצא ולך לשמורך בכל דרכיך, על כפיים ישומך פן תיגע ברגליך. על שכב ופתת תדרוך תרמוז כבי ותנין, כי חשך ואפלתי יעשב כי יד שמי. יקר נביניהו, אמי אנוכי בצרה חלצהו ויכבדהו. אורך ימים אז בעבר בשועתי, אורך ימים אז בעבר בשועתי.
Will another 6 gentlemen please come forward to join us? Come both here. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Members of the Chevra Kadisha, please.
Head is here. So you got to go that way. And I
Go down. Come warm back a bit.
You want the families this side or that? This side.
Alma Komo Yavo B'Shalom. May David come to his eternal rest in peace. We now call the mourners to come and place 3 handfuls of sand into the grave. Once that's complete, we'll ask everybody, all the other gentlemen first, to come forward. Once you've placed the 3 spades of sand into the grave, take the spade, put it back in the ground, do not pass it on to the next person. Just hang on 1 second. Hold this for me. Hold it for me, please. 1 second. Can come closer a little bit. Okay, who's next?
Yeah, okay. This is a altar uniform.
Just step back to allow everybody to. Will all the gentlemen please come forward? Start filling up.
Please come forward and place 3 shovel loads of earth on the grave.
No, there's plenty of people come. long way to go.
Okay, no problem.
If you've had a chance, please come a second time. We need to cover the coffin before we continue.
Please come forward till we've covered the coffin.
Yeah, down the sides. They must throw down the sides.
Down, yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Can I ask you to be silent, please? This is a funeral. A man was called before the king, and he was very frightened to go. So he asked his three closest friends to accompany him. The first friend said, "No, I have to stay behind." The second friend said that he would walk him to the door, but no further. And the third friend said, "I will walk you to the door, stand next to you, and argue your case before the king." The rabbis say, so it is when a man is called to the next world. The first friend is his material goods, his possessions. They stay behind. The second friend is his loved ones, his family. We can walk him to the door, but no further. The third friend, however, are his deeds, the way he lived in this world. It is the deeds that go with him and argue his case before the king. To paraphrase the book of Proverbs, his deeds speak his praise. And this is the story of Dr. David Jankelowitz. The deeds that David performed in his lifetime are now speaking on his behalf, and they are speaking loud and clear. With broken hearts, my dear friends, we come here today to mourn the loss of Dr. David, who everyone gathered here only has praise for him, his life, and his achievements. I first met David and interacted with him in September 1998 when I was first invited to visit the local Krugersdorp Jewish community, which he loved and served with dedication and loyalty for so many years. In September 2000, when we were establishing a Jewish community in Gaborone, Botswana, I asked David if we could borrow 2 Sifrei Torah for their high holy days and return them afterwards. He obliged, and he had relayed the story that he was so shocked that I brought them back straight away when I was the guest rabbi here for Purim just 5 weeks ago, and we had dinner with David and Beulah and the community in the hall. My friends, what struck me the most when I would meet David was his face. his smile, his eyes, kind, passionate, friendly. Whenever I would meet him, it was a pleasant and positive occasion, and I'll never forget our interactions. You know, often when a rabbi has to interact with the chairman of a shul, sometimes the vibes aren't so as they say. But with David, it was always great. He was a good and proud Jew who everyone looked forward to interacting with. Even his patients, when he sometimes made them a bit einar in the dentist chair, they still looked forward to seeing David. To the United Hebrew Institutions of Krugersdorp, to Beulah and your family, I say let us continue this kindness and positivity in our lives. And by doing this, we will keep David's memory and everything that was important to him alive. David, my dear friend, rest in peace. Mark. There's a mark for you.
I have some comments to make. I try to connect them, but perhaps they'll just stand on their own. Difficult to talk in the past tense. My father was small of stature, and yet for me, and for many of you, he was a much, much bigger man. He was a big man because of the things he did. Here are some of the things he did and some of the things I learned from him. I learned that family is important. One of my earliest memories as a small child is going to visit an elderly aunt who was struggling economically but was too proud to get help. And we as children were given coins to slip onto the floor or under the seat to make the contribution and retain the dignity. I remember when my father, together with his cousins, instituted a cousin day when all of us as cousins could gather. All of the many descendants of my late grandfather and his brothers and sister would gather together. My father and mother were married for almost 59 years. That's a statement about how important family is. And his grandchildren that he loved. My one son is special needs, and my father loved him just like he loved all his other grandchildren. My other son has written something which he asked me to read. Yesterday morning, I woke up to the awful news that my Opa had died. The Opa who was always there for me and interested in what was going on in my life, as well as in everyone else's life. He always wanted to know how school was going, what activities I was doing, how our shul was going. It was great going to Kruger with you and seeing you at my bar mitzvah. I will always remember you, Opa, and while I'm so sad I have no more grandpas, I'm grateful to still have my grandmas. My father also loved community. Thank you to Rabbi Silberhoff for conducting the funeral. Many of the people here will of course know that very often it was my father who conducted the funerals or the unveilings or ran the services, because community was everything for him. The Jewish community, but also his involvement in the wider Krugersdorp community, in Rotary, in the body corporate where he lived. The third thing I learned from my father was always to be productive. My last conversation with him was on Saturday night. On Saturday night, when he had already had a day of feeling better, a day in which he believed, the discussion was, when am I going back to work? He wanted to go back to work, and I was, having had COVID myself, was saying maybe you should take another week, take some time to recover. That was completely typical of my father. And we spoke, as we usually did, about the shul and the fact that there hadn't been a minyan because he hadn't been well enough to attend. And for once, we didn't speak about sport. My mother and I would have the conversations about all kinds of things, and in the end, my father would end up coming back and discussing the shul here and the shul that I grew up in, because being Jewish was something very important to my dad. Growing up in a house where he was on the committee to collect money for the URA, where we had a blue box, where he was involved in the lodge when there was a lodge, and Kadima, and especially the shul. I never saw my father as a religious person, but I saw my father as a very, very Jewish person. And I too share my father's passion for the Jewish community. One of the things that he would always talk about is community, and I would talk about little minutiae, little interesting things, like the fact that Israel and the diaspora are out of sync sometimes with the Torah reading. Like this week, we are out of sync. And this week we are reading Acharei Mot, after the death. This is the Torah reading in which I will always remember that it was after the death of my father, of our father. May his memory be a blessing for all of us.
Thank you so much, Mark. Really beautifully spoken. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, Beulah, Gary, Lauren, Mark, all your families, I can't say we feel your loss as you do, but I can tell you Krugersdorp feels the loss tremendously. A system of disbelief. We can't do it. But if I say my time with David goes back a number of years, he was 3 or 4 years my senior, I think it was 3 years, and his leadership and his whole being was recognized at Krugersdorp High School when he was in matric and given the honor of being a prefect. One of 6 boys and of 6 girls. That was the start to David and his career. David continued his studies in helping people with their teeth and going forward. He also had to do what was in his heart, and we all know that he married Beulah. That was in her heart. And Beulah, let me say our grateful thanks for allowing David the time to pursue his wants, his wanting to help people. Thank you so much on behalf of all of us. Let me also say, I know, Mark, you've dwelt on it, but when I look into the shul affairs, David came back from London, got involved in shul affairs, served on the council of the shul for, I can't count that high. He really, how many?
Came back from London to have me, 57 years.
57, that's all. There, Mark, thank you. I knew I'd get it somewhere. 57 years. He gave unstintingly. He didn't want any reward or favor. He gave from his heart, and he moved slowly up the channels until he became the vice president for a number of years, and then the president. And I know it was numerous times, but I cannot give you an exact figure. He was the president, continuing to lead us, continuing to guide us with his knowledge. And then when, through the turbulence that this dwindling community went, there was one person to turn to, and we all turned to David Jankelowitz. David accepted the position. He got through the turbulence. He moved ahead. He had us in mind. He performed everything he could. And I think simply also after he graduated and came back from London, he joined our Chevra Kadisha, which he worked on tirelessly. No question, no anything. And I'm saying he moved, Mark has already referred to it, but the Rotarians that are here, all I know is David wanted to serve the community, not just the Jewish community. And in Rotary, he has more than made his way, been president a few times, and I think, if I'm correct, his term now of presidency just short time ago came to an end. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm saying on behalf of all of us, Beulah, Mark, Gary and Lauren and your families, may you be blessed for many, many years to come. May you get the strength to get through this ordeal, and may David's path up be paved with all the deeds that he deserves.
Amen.
Thank you, guys. We wish you long life.
Can I ask the mourners to go around to the head, please? Yeah, please.
You're right.
And I'll let you know when to say Kaddish. Anu Adonai melech malei rachamim, Elohei haruchot l'chol basar asher b'yadcha nafshot hachaim v'hameitim, Ana kabel b'chazdcha gadol et nishmat, Reb David Mordechai b'Reb Sholem Yehuda v'Rochel Ita, asher ne'esaf el amo, chus v'chamol alav, slach u'mechol uchol pshav, כי אדם אין צדיק בארץ אשר יעשה טוב ולא יחטא. זכור לו צדקתו אשר עשה, ויהי שכירו איתו ופעולתו לפניו. הנעשתה את נשמתו בצל כנפיך. הודיענו הרחיים סוף השמחות את פניך נעימות במנחה נצח, ותשפיע לו מרב טוב הצפון לצדיקים כמו שכתוב. מה רב טובך אשר צפנת ליראך, פעלת לחוסים בך נגד בני אדם. God and King are full of compassion, God of the spirits of all flesh, in whose hands are the souls of the living and the dead. Receive, we beseech you, in your great loving kindness, the soul of Dr. David Jankelowitz, who has been gathered unto his people. Have mercy upon him, pardon all his transgressions, for there is no one righteous upon earth who does only good and never sins. Remember for him the righteousness which he did, and let his reward be with him, and his recompense before him. Shelter his soul in the shadow of your wings. Make known to him the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand is bliss forevermore. Bestow upon him the abounding happiness that is treasured up for the righteous, as it is written, how great is your goodness which you have set aside for those who fear you, which you have made for those who trust in you, rather than in the children of men. Dear God, who heals the broken hearts and binds up their wounds, grant your consolation to the mourners, to Beulah, Mark, Gary, Lauren, and David's brothers, Edwin and Barry. Strengthen and support them in the days of their grief and sorrow, and remember them and their families for a long and good life. Put into their hearts the fear and love of you, that they may serve you with a perfect heart, and let their latter end be peace. Amen. Like one who his mother comforts, so will I comfort you, says God, and in Jerusalem shall you be comforted. Your sun shall never more set, neither shall your moon wane, because God will be your everlasting light, and the days of your mourning shall end. He makes death vanish in life eternal, and God wipes away tears from off all the faces, and the reproach of his people shall he remove from all the earth, because God has spoken it. Ka'ish asher imot anachamenu, ken anochi anachemchem, u'v'Yerushalayim tenuchamu. Lo yavod shimshech v'rechek lo yasef, ki Adonai yelach la'or olam v'shalmu yemei v'lech. Bila maved lanetzach, u'macha Adonai Elohim dima me'al kol panim, v'chepat amo yasim al kol ha'aretz, ki Adonai diber. Kaddish together, please.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, עלמה דיברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי בחיי כל וביומי כל ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו
Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabam Avarach Leolam Umel Maya.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולמי ולמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי
David Mordechai ben Sholem Yehuda.
לאלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושלכתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו
Amen.
יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלי ישראל ואמרו
Amen.
עשה שלום במרומך ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו
Amen. Please, Rabbi.
El mele rachamim shachin b'maromim hamesei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina v'malot kedoshim etohar kezahar rakia mazhirim et nishmat Reb David Mordechai bereb Shalom Yehuda shehalach le'olamo Babu shekol b'nei mishpachto Ubavu United Hebrew Institutions of Kruger's Law Ubavu Sandringham Gardens Yitlu tzedakah bar haskarat nishmato Began Eden temenuchato Lachein ba'u ala rachamim Yastirehu b'seit lekanafav le'olamim V'yisror rachayim et nishmato Adonai hu nachalato V'yanuach hamishkavo b'shalom V'nomar Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
Ladies and gentlemen, that completes our service. There will be no more askoros at the graveside. All those wishing to perpetuate the memory of the late David Jankelowitz by donating to the Chevra Kadisha may do so at the office on your way out. All funds raised in this manner will be used for the less fortunate amongst our people, and a list of donors will be forwarded on to the family. Rabbi Sobov, what do I say to you? I say thank you for coming to Krugersdorp. Thank you for your very dignified service and your advice. We really appreciate it. To everybody here, thank you for coming, and we hope you have a safe trip home. God bless you all.
Thank you very much. Can I ask those gathered to form a passageway, a pathway here for the mourners to walk through? Only once they've reached the end of the pathway, then please offer your condolences to them. Anybody who'd like to come forward and place more sand in the grave, you're most welcome to do so now.
Oh yes, prayers is where tonight, at the home. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to mention that prayers will be tonight at 6 o'clock at the home of the Jankelowitzes. Thank you.
Hamakom Yenachem etchem b'torach sha'ar avei Tzion Yerushalayim. May the Almighty comfort you among all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. May you know no further sorrow. We wish you a long and good life. Please, you can go to the end.
I thought and I didn't know to guess or not. Hectic. Absolutely hectic. Printing well, thanks. And you guys?
Yeah, I'm okay. All good. All good.
We have to be.
Yeah. See you working with the
What's the other option?
No, it's not.
It's not an option for me.
Nice to see you.
2 years ago I was on the deathbed.
Yeah.
5 operations in 6 days. They lost me twice on the table, but Hashem didn't want me. What can I say?
Gotta wait your turn, boy.
Yeah. No, all good.
Are you working?
No, I have to close my office from that. I was in hospital 4.5 months.
Oh my God.